Welcome back to another week of Behind the Lens. I'm Debbie Elias, film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens, where we go behind the lens and below the line with those movers and shakers, the film and TV makers, those producers, directors, actors, writers, cinematographers, production designers, costume designers, composers, VFX gurus, sound editors, sound mixers, film editors, you name it. And I talk to them. Been doing a lot of talking. You're going to hear some of that today. But a lot of good stuff coming up. I'm going to tell you right now, be on the lookout this week. I'm going to have a special edition of Behind the Lens up and out on YouTube, on all the podcast platforms, on the website. It's going to be a special Tron Aries with my exclusive interviews with makeup artisan Donald Mowat and cinematographer Jeff Cronenweth. Love both those guys. Donald has become a dear friend over the years. And these interviews, I love these interviews talking about Tron Aries. So that's going to be a special Behind the Lens later this week for you. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But right now, this week, today on Behind the Lens, it's all about action. And that's thanks to director SHANE DAX TAYLOR and his new film, Exit Protocol, and director Michael Dowse and his latest film, Trap House. But first up, let's take a look at Trap House and my exclusive interview with director Michael Dowse. I first met and interviewed Michael some 14 years ago for Take Me Home Tonight and the terrific hockey movie Goon. Goon holds up to this day. Since then, Michael has given us some great work on television and film with episodic series like FUBAR Age of Computer and The Sticky, along with the big screen 8-Bit Christmas and Stuber, the latter which stars Dave Bautista. Well, Michael is back, and after 14 years, we're getting a chance to talk again. And Dave Bautista is also back with him for Trap House. And I have to say, this is a fun, multi-generational action flick that boasts outstanding action set pieces, some superb cinematography, thanks to Matt Flannery, who most of you know his work from the Raid franchise and working with Gareth Evans. And the film has a lightness of touch and visual tone that's really enjoyable and entertaining. Trap House is set in El Paso, Texas, at the border, where DEA Agent Ray Seale and his team infiltrate a drug trafficking operation run by the notorious cartel boss Guzman. But things go wrong, and one of his team is shot and killed. And in the aftermath, the slain agent's son, Jesse, is devastated and struggles financially, having to move back to Spain with his mother. Ray's own son, Cody, feels sorry for Jesse and bands together a group of other DEA kids to utilize their skills and access resources to enact revenge, stealing money from the trap houses operated by the Guzman family, and somehow getting that money to Jesse so that he and his mom can buy a house and move back to El Paso. You talk about the lengths that somebody will go for a friend. You see that up close and personal here in Trap House. As a teenage ring of thieves go for riskier targets, the DEA and the cartel both close in. Cody quickly realizes he's entered them all into a deadly game, and when Ray finds out the truth as to who is behind these targets, he must desperately act to protect his son from the increasing danger that has resulted from the heist that these teens have pulled off. Now, Trap House, directed by Michael, written by Gary Scott Thompson and Tom O'Connor, film stars Dave Bautista and Bobby Cannavale as DEA agents Ray Seale and Andre Washburn, Jack Champion as Ray's son Cody, and Sophia Lillis, Whitney Peak, Zaire Adams, and Blue Del Barrio as Cody's friends, Denny, Sophia, Kyle, and Jesse. Plus, we also have Indy Navarrete and Kate Del Castillo. Kate has long been a favorite of mine since we first met and spoke on her film La Misma Luna. Kate is just so wonderful in everything she does. Now, as Michael and I dig into the making of Trap House, he highlights its blend of action, comedy, and drama. Notable for Michael is primarily a comedy guy. So to bring in action and drama here, this is a new triumvirate for him. Notable for him is the script's detailed action set pieces and the emotional depth of Cody and Ray's relationship that was all on the page from the start. As you'll hear him discuss, visual storytelling is important, especially with a film like this. And he makes the most of that with his collaboration with Matt Flannery, implementing night vision, gas mask, a dust storm, as well as capturing dynamic action sequences. Calling on editor Tim Porter, whose work you know from Game of Thrones, Andor, House of the Dragon, The Family Plan. Michael also talks about how, quote-unquote, challenging but effective the editing process was. An interesting element of Trap House is the film's score, which is composed by Jack Latham and Amanda Yamate. It balances the high-energy action with emotional depth. Interesting for you filmmakers out there, Michael discusses learning the importance of working with a robust second unit, and that he also found drama easier to handle than comedy. But working with a robust second unit, that's a big key for so many filmmakers that have not had action experience before. You really need to have a good second unit. And Michael talks about this, so I hope you enjoy hearing what he has to say. And of course, we talk about his cast and performances as well. So take a listen as Michael Dowse talks about Trap House.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Michael. It has been many years since we chatted.
God, what did we last chat about? What was
we did Take Me Home Tonight and Goon. So
Goon, okay.
It's been a long time.
I'm getting old.
I'm getting even older. So, but I have to say, I had so much fun watching Trap House.
Oh, nice.
You've got the same kind of energy happening that you had with Stuber.
Thank you.
You and Dave Bautista have a really great, obviously a great collaborative rapport. It showed there, it shows here. But this whole story is so much fun. And to have this quote-unquote next generation of actors, of teens, of the parents, is always fun to see. We don't see it enough. We see it more in soap opera land, but not in film. And so that is a real joy. And to see the difference in personalities and the whole tone. We have the dead seriousness that Ray and Andre and their team have. And then we have the seriousness that Cody brings with his group, with Denny and Sophia and Kyle and Jesse. But there's a lightness to it. And you carry that through with your DP, with Matt Flannery, so that you keep the film visually, tonally light and bright, that really picks up on the kids and what they're doing. You know, you let the heavier, the darker stuff be handled by Ray and Andre. I love the way you have structured this with visuals, story, and performance. Really nicely done, Michael.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Where did you even start with this when you got the script?
I mean, the script initially, when I first read it, I really loved the script. The script obviously did a lot of the heavy lifting initially. I think, to your point, the set pieces, the action set pieces were already very well realized in the script.
Sure.
And I loved how they used light, or the lack thereof. Each one had a signature element to it that I could really sink my teeth in. So I was excited by like the initial trap house where they used night vision, which I thought was very interesting. Like, how do we use light in that world? And then you go to the van heist where they're using the DEA equipment and the gas masks and the tear gas, and visually that's interesting. And then culminating in the beer truck heist, which is in the sandstorm, you know, which again gets rid of light and visually is interesting. So there is a lot for me to hook my teeth into as a director of action in that sense. But I think most importantly, I think the heart of the story was there in terms of Cody and Ray's relationship and the sense of grief between the two, and just a sense of family throughout the film that you know, you had a family on one side, you have a family on the other side, and both are well shaped. You know, one is obviously the villain and one is the good guy, but I like the shape they gave to both sides, and that there was sort of parallels between the father-son relationship there and the mother-daughter or sister relationship on the other side. Don't print that, the sister part, but and then obviously there's this wonderful teenage heist sort of movie within this whole thing, which is another very interesting element of these kids rebelling against their parents, even though the parents are quote unquote the good guys. But that side of what is it to be a kid of a DEA agent or a cop, and what is it to deal with, like, you lose one parent and then being faced with losing another parent every day he goes to work, you know? So there was a lot of sort of pools of depth that I could sink into for these characters, and the whole package sort of really appealed to me in terms of that. I love movies that sort of have a bridge of tone and deal with these sort of disparate sort of emotions, and I think great movies sort of can kind of capture all of those under one roof, and that's what I tried to do with this film.
Well, and I think you definitely succeeded, Michael. And mentioning the lighting and what you and Matt came up with, I absolutely love that we went green night vision. I love the dust storm because, you know, it also metaphorically speaks to Ray and Andre. You've got a parent. He is he cannot see. He doesn't know where his kid is. He doesn't really know what his kid is doing. And it just metaphorically is just so perfect. Just like the gas masks, nobody can see who's behind them and who's doing what. But the whole idea of the kids, immediately what spoke to me, and probably because of growing up in the 60s, is when you were a kid, you wanted to play Army. You wanted to go in and save and fix whatever was wrong that you saw. And that's a great feeling that comes through with the camaraderie of these 5 kids, which is kudos to your casting. Because you really do. There is not a moment that you do not believe the connection between these 5 kids. It is outstanding.
Yeah, they're a great group of actors and people. And, you know, when you cast, you know, we had fantastic casting directors, but, you know, when you put the group together, you hope and pray and you try to foster it with rehearsals and, you know, dinners and just letting these people hang out and get to know each other. But yeah, they really became fast friends, and it was great to see. You want to breathe that on the set, and they're great people and great actors. And I hope this is a movie that people look back on and go, oh God, this was one of their first parts or one of their first bigger parts. And I think this cast will age like wine in a great way.
Well, and you really let them all shine. There is more focus on them than on Bobby Cannavale and Dave Bautista. And I just think that is fantastic that we see this quote-unquote stepping stone, so to speak, for them. It's just wonderful. Also, where it's key that you have Matt Flannery as your DP, he is one of the best shooting action out there. Fight or Flight, The Raid 2, Raid Redemption, his work with Gareth Evans. I mean, my God. And you guys really have some incredible action sequences happening with multiple moving parts. How challenging was that for the two of you to logistically plot that out? Because you've got a lot of hand-to-hand action happening, man on man. In addition to the armament that you expect, there's a certain kind of armament you don't expect, but it's so much fun to see. But there is a lot of logistics here, so I'm curious about how you and Matt address that with the various fight scenes and shootouts.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, it's you hire Matt Flannery because he's amazing.
Yeah.
And I was such a big fan of his work. So when he was available, I was like, yes, immediately. That guy's top of my list. So, and he's, a lovely Welsh gentleman, a nice human, which always helps. He's fantastic to work with, and you just plan. You really, we just try to be meticulous with how we plan. I storyboard all the action sequences. On this one, it was my first time working with a very robust second unit.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do that on a film where you only have 40, 45 days and not enough time in the day to shoot all the action yourself. So it's really about forging that relationship with your second unit crew, with that director and DP and AD on the second unit, and really trusting them, but also really just communicating. So it's me and Matt planning and storyboarding, and us going through exactly what shot is theirs, what shot is ours, the style, the spirit of how we're trying to make this stuff, and making sure those guys are on board in terms of matching what we're trying to do, and they were fantastic in doing that. So you sort of have your best laid plans, but that sandstorm sequence was probably our biggest challenge, just because there were so many moving parts, and we probably, between the first and the second unit, we probably went back to that location 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
Plus the explosion, plus. So a lot of different things, but I love shooting action. Matt's a master of it.
Yeah.
The Raid is some of the best action ever committed to film, and I think it's really about doing it with performance and trying to capture it into the frame rather than trying to do it with editing. And that's really the philosophy that I try to take forward, where you're not trying to shoot the same piece of action with 5 different times and throw it into the suite, but you're making specific decisions on how you're going to shoot one piece of action, like one specific move in a fight. You're going to shoot this way, and it'll connect to the next piece like this. And you're not over covering and just throwing it in the edit suite and saying, cut this up really quickly. You're making decisions early in prep in terms of how you cover the action. It's a lot like covering dance or something, where you want to be wide enough where you feel the movement of the artists and not inside of it sort of getting overcut, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And of course, in addition to the big action sequences you have, I love what you guys do in the tunnels. That is a great contrast to these fights that are happening, these shootouts that are happening outside in the daylight or at night, but wide open, versus the narrower tunnel sequences. And I got to tell you, your camera guys, whoever was doing the camera operation in there, did a marvelous job.
Oh yeah. No, they were great operators. Mostly local Albuquerque guys. They were fantastic. Yeah, no, the crew was amazing. They have great crews in New Mexico, and we were very lucky with them. I love that crew, and we had a great time making it. I mean, it's always a challenge. You never have enough time in the day, but you just try to be as prepared as possible and going with the plan and try to execute.
Once you have all of this great footage and these great performances, you're putting it in the hands of Tim Porter, who is superb as an editor. And what I find interesting, I think he was an excellent choice for you, because while he can cut the darker, heavier things like Game of Thrones and Andor, House of the Dragon, the family plan and the tone in that is quite similar to a lot of the tone that you have happening here with Trap House, in terms of the lightness that we feel when the kids are around. So I think you made a really smart move getting Tim. But how challenging was the editing process on this one, Michael? Because you do have so many moving parts and so many people in their different disciplines and locations during some of these action set pieces.
Yeah, I mean, it's always editing is always a challenge for sure. It's what's interesting is, when I do a comedy, it's almost more of a challenge because I there's so much improv and longer takes, and there's so many variations. Tim is a brilliant editor and an award-winning editor, so I was very lucky to get him. And I live in Montreal. He lives in London, or just outside of London. So it's all done remotely, and in a weird way, it's sort of to the benefit of the film is that we don't waste a lot of time. You kind of miss like sort of the locker room mentality of hunkering down in an edit suite, but Tim just did a fantastic job, and there wasn't a ton. There was some improv and some variations on stuff and stuff where we let the kids run and have some fun and improvise. But for the most part, Tim's a very, very skilled editor, and it was a lot of sort of just leaving him with notes, which I'm more than happy to do. I come from an editing background. I started as an editor, so I have a lot of faith in editors, and I just I've learned through making 10 films to the leaving notes, let them do the fine tuning, and then come back in and oversee it. And Tim has all the trust I can give an editor. He's fantastic, and it was a really good working relationship. We had a lot of fun, and it was and it didn't. We had a very tight schedule. We had to be done by a certain time, and we got there in a great way. And we had good reaction to the first couple of cuts, and so we got in and got out and cut a great film.
Well, I have to say, I love the money montage. That is just so much fun, and that's really where you feel and appreciate the fact that these are kids. They're teens. Yep. They're high school, but they're kids. And that money montage is fantastic. And similarly, it's not quite a montage, but the planning sequences leading up to the second heist is really well cut, going back and forth with the different elements, because now they're going to have a solid plan with recon and everything. And watching that shape is just so wonderfully chopped. It's so wonderfully put together by Tim. I really love it. And then you have your quieter moments. You have the father-son moment, or the father and mother moment of Kate Del Castillo's character of Natalia, having dinner and talking parenting. Very quiet, very fine-tuned. So you really have a nice balance in here, Michael.
No, thank you. Yeah, no, that was the goal, is to have a film that sort of that works on multiple, it's firing on multiple pistons and working on multiple levels, and it's sort of fun as a director to bring that sort of shape and depth to each character. There's no each character is important in its own way, and tonally to sort of play around as a guy who comes from more of a comedy background. I was excited to stretch a different muscle for sure and try something differently. So, but I think that levity and that sense of playfulness is very important, especially when you're dealing with teenager characters, and to have their spirit sort of in the characters is super important, and that sort of comes from my comedy background. I mean, in a lot of ways,
that's the heart of the film. That is the heart of this film. Now, very quickly, I want to ask you about what you were looking for musically from your composers with this one, because you do have the action elements, you've got high energy elements, you have quiet moments, and some very emotional moments. Watching Jack Champion as Cody and Sophia Lillis as Denny, when we get into that third act, that is just heart-wrenching. And your music really does support. It's a beautiful undercurrent no matter what is happening. So I'm curious what you were looking for from your composers.
Yeah, they were a younger team, Jack and Amanda, and they they were fantastic. They come from a very wide background where they've been producing hip hop, and they've worked with the best and brightest in terms of what's out there right now musically. And I think, when you do these movies, the score is always in the shadow of Sicario in terms of that sound and that very, that very sort of famous piece of music. So we're trying to capture that sort of level, that gravitas as well at the same breath, but also open it up to the lightness of these kids. And, it was a real mix where some of the music, it was, pieces that we put in initially and that we kept because we could never actually top, but they came in and they really found the heart of the film and found, it's really about finding that central theme. And once we found that central theme of the story, they had something to sort of offshoot from there, and that sort of becomes the connective tissue throughout the movies. So they were amazing to work with. They were tireless. We put them through the ringer in terms of how long the film took to get done. But they did an amazing work. I'd love to work with them again. They were fantastic.
Well, I've got one last question for you, Michael. I'm really curious. With Trap House, what did you learn about yourself as a filmmaker that you can take forward into your future work? Because of the fact you do have some comedy in here, you have drama, you have familial elements happening in here, you've got action, you've got you have pieces from a lot of what you've done in the past, and it's all come together here. So I'm curious what you learned as a filmmaker that you can take forward into those upcoming projects.
Yeah, I mean, I learned, as I said before, I learned a lot about working with the second unit and how much of a relationship that is and how important they are and what that, how that works. But I think that's sort of more of a technical element. I think I learned, you always learn from different actors, and you learn a lot about writing from different actors and about dialogue and about not being so on the nose. You have a tendency to, as coming from an editing background, you want to sort of protect yourself and overcover. And I felt like you got to make strong decisions and stick with them. And I guess I felt like I could. For me, what I learned was that drama isn't as hard as comedy, and I'm good at it, and I still love shooting action, but it feels like I could do drama no problem. To me, making people laugh is much harder than making people cry.
Well, you do a great job with both in Trap House. Yeah. So
thank you.
I can't wait to see what you do next. I think it's the stunt stunt driver movie that's coming up. So
yep, I just wrapped on that, so I'm just in post on that. I just started editing, so that'll be my next film. I wrapped literally 10 days ago. So
wow,
I'm in the thick of that now.
Well, I'm looking forward to that because you're reteaming with Jay also. So happy to see that. Michael, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful getting to chat with you about Trap House, and I hope we don't go 14 years before talking again.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Michael, so much, and you have a great rest of your day. And that was Michael Dowse talking Trap House. And you can see Trap House in theaters this coming Friday, November 14th. Now let's keep the action going with director SHANE DAX TAYLOR and his new film, Exit Protocol. I love this film. I had so much fun watching the film with a terrific blend of action, emotion, humor, and performances from some of my favorite actors like Dolph Lundgren, Michael Jai White, Charlotte Kirk, Scott Martin, and the story itself is great and fun. This is a simple tale of assassins, aka hitmen. What are they going to do? They're going to go out and kill people. In this particular case, our notorious hitman, Sam Hayden, who has self-proclaimed himself the best hitman ever, He's made a career of killing other hitmen or assassins. But he now wants out. But walking away is not that easy. He's now got one last job to do, and that is take out his rival Charles Mangold, who also thinks that he is the best hitman in the world. Unfortunately, Hayden gets double-crossed by his boss, who has hits out on Mangold and Hayden. Now marked for death, Hayden unexpectedly finds himself having to partner with Mangold in order to outrun his boss, and the third hitman in the mix, who's been hired to take them both out. Trust me, it is a lot of fun watching this. It's kind of like a shell game on the street. Directed by Shane Dax Taylor, written by Chad Law, Exit Protocol stars Scott Martin, Dolph Lundgren, Charlotte Kirk, Lena Maya, Stephanie Baron, and Michael Jai White. Now, this exclusive interview with Shane is definitely one I will always cherish, and one I'm so glad was not on video, or you all would have seen me blushing and getting teary-eyed. I don't take compliments well. Those of you that know me very well know that. Not only is Shane articulate, thoughtful, and knowledgeable in his craft, but he opened our interview telling me what a fan he is of Behind the Lens, and that he's been a listener for years. And he goes into depth about what it is he loves about the show and about my interviews. And it means so much to me that my listeners, especially filmmakers, are fans of the show and my interviews. And it humbles me when I get to speak with those who are. I mean that sincerely. And as Shane mentioned, many of his filmmaker friends have been guests on the show or interviewed by me at some point over the years. Well, Shane, now it's your turn. I can honestly say that in my 44 plus years as a film critic and the 11, almost 12 years of Behind the Lens, of doing this show, Shane is a first for me as he talked in depth about the challenges of, pause, stepping in as director after the original director passed away. How does one even handle that? And it wasn't like it was a year earlier. This was just weeks before shooting was supposed to start. So Shane talks about how he did it, a big part of which was his crew with whom he had worked prior. Cinematographer Mark Rutledge, who recently directed the fantastic action flick Osiris, and who Shane worked with on the Christmas classic and Masquerade, and editor Jake, I know I'm going to screw up the pronunciation of Jake's last name, Buchheit, who he worked with on the Christmas classic and The Best Man. Also making things a bit easier for Shane, stepping into this project, was that he had worked with Dolph and Scott on The Best Man. And another big part of Shane's directing Exit Protocol is his long-standing relationship with writer Chad Law and the evolution of Chad's writing style over the years, which Shane has become accustomed to. Diving into the production aspects, such as developing the visual grammar with Mark Rutledge and focusing on a light and bright tone, and the importance of showing the beauty of the world and allowing actors to shine. A big challenge with filming, as if stepping into this after the original director passed away, a big challenge with filming this was wildfires during the shoot, which affected camera angles and placement, changing air temperature, air quality, lighting, color, as well as last-minute evacuations from a fire zone. And in addition to the wildfires, how about the flooding that came after that, which wiped away the principal cabin used in filming? All of this gave Shane some solid lessons in adaptability and the importance of having trust in your team. You talk about stopping and changing on a dime. An interesting component to Exit Protocol is also composer Yagmur Kaplan. Now, I'm very familiar with Kaplan's work, thanks to films like Cash Out, High Rollers, Alarum, and Deadlock. But the tone of Exit Protocol, which provides lots of playful humor, thanks to Michael Jai White, Scott Martin, and Dolph Lundgren, is different than much of Kaplan's prior work. Here, Kaplan provides some wonderful emotional depth while maintaining action energy. Plus, he had a few welcome surprises for Shane as he was doing his own mixing, sound mixing. And speaking of mixing and editing, Shane also talks about working with his editor, Jake, and the importance of pacing and balancing action with quieter moments, but also letting the subtle humor shine through. It's a very interesting and eye-opening conversation, so take a listen as Shane Dax Taylor discusses Exit Protocol. Hi, Shane.
Hi, Debbie. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you, too. What a fun film Exit Protocol
Thank
is.
you so much. Well, before we start, I just want to say I've been a long-time fan. So, I mean, I've listened to your podcast. I've had friends on there and over the years. So, you've been doing this you've had this podcast for quite some time.
And I'll be coming up on my 12th year in January.
Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome.
So, but wow, that's so nice that you listen to the show and you have friends that have been on and they still talk to you and they didn't tell you to avoid me. So that's a good thing.
That's always a good thing.
I look at some of the talent that you're working with, and I've interviewed so many of them. Dolph, we go way, way, way back, and then Michael. Michael is just a kick in the ass. But you've got Charlotte. Charlotte is just amazing and so talented. But even you've got Mark Rutledge, who just did Osiris. He's your DP, and he does an amazing job. You've got Jake as your editor, and he's done a few films with you before. And then your composer. I have loved the scores he's done on the one-name action thrillers like Cash Out and High Rollers and Alarum with Stallone and Eastwood and Deadlock. And then you give him something that's action, but with a lighter flair to it to compose for with Exit Protocol. So
yes.
You have so many elements here, Shane, that made me anxious to see the film and talk to you to begin with. And now that I've seen the film, I was absolutely delighted, and I'm so thrilled to talk to you about it.
Well, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, this is this was a wild journey for me to get on this film. I mean, I don't know if you knew, I wasn't the original director on this. The original director passed away like a week or so before shooting. So I was brought on, kind of thrown to the wolves only because I'd worked with Scott Martin and Daniel Zerilli and Dolph and Mark and all these guys. So, it was one of those things like I might have hesitated before, but knowing the crew that was already in place and the prep that had already been done, that I was, under the circumstances, I'm thrilled that I was able to help them get this film made.
How much prep had been done when you got brought into this? Or did you really get a chance to reconfigure the blueprint with some of your ideas?
Fortunately, this was written by Chad Law, and Chad's like my brother. I think we've made 5 films together or so, and we've written 2 other ones that have been made that I didn't direct. So that we have a shorthand there that I can go in and based on locations. I mean, there were several weeks of prep that were done before me, so I was able to step in. It was kind of like directing a TV show. Here's the elements, and then step in and do it. But having worked with Scott and Dolph before, it just made it so much easier. And of course, the crew. I'd worked with all the crew multiple times. Like Mark Rutledge and I think we've done 3 or 4 films together. So it was quite easy. And then production designer Loris Allen's fantastic. I try to bring him everywhere I go. I try to bring him to Bulgaria, but they like, we have production designers here. I was, and Mark Rutledge and DP. So I like that crew a whole lot. And I've shot in Ruidoso 3 times, and we'll definitely be back.
Oh my God. I had high hopes for the film anyway because Chad wrote the script, and I'm a big fan of Chad's work with Desert Dawn, Into the Deep that Christian Sesma directed. I love Into the Deep. I love Brandon Slagle's The Flood, The Get Back. So much good stuff. And Chad can go either hard, dark action or bring a lighter tone, which is what Exit Protocol is.
It's funny because he and my last two films have been, or actually probably more than that, but I've been post on a film that Chad wrote that it's more comedic, horror, campy horror film. So yeah, Chad's really, I've known him we've known each other since 2014, 15, something like that. And like I said, we've done a lot of films together. So it's fun to see Chad move over and do, he's funny. So to see more comedy come out in his scripts it's been a blast to see the evolution.
Well, and with this particular one, with Exit Protocol, a lot of people, Dolph Lundgren is actually quite funny. And I think everybody really took note of that in the Expendables franchise, with the one-on-ones and the repartee there. But even outside of that, he did that Vampire Hunter movie a few years ago, and he was great. There's something about how Dolph can deliver a one-off that gets a laugh. And then you put him and Scott together, and Scott's nonchalance. And then they both have confidence. And then you bring Michael into the mix. And the three of them, they all think they're the best of the best. And that makes for fun. And you capitalize on that, not only through the script and the performances, but in what you and Mark design with your visual grammar. Because you keep the visual tonal bandwidth is light, it's bright. This is not cloak and dagger. So I'm curious about your conversations with Mark in developing the visual grammar on this film.
Yeah, with Mark and I, we go way back. So that helped too. So going in, we knew that this was we want to entertain people. We weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. We wanted to be fun, and we wanted to show these set pieces and, whether it's airport shootouts or it's conversation at this mansion or just the woods shootouts with the onslaughts and assaults. We just wanted to try to, show off this world and show off how beautiful it could be, because this, with these actors, just kind of let them do their thing,
Mm-hmm.
But, that said, having worked with Dolph and Scott before, my favorite scenes, I did The Best Man with him.
Right.
And he and Luke Wilson just sitting at the bar talking, and you see, like, Dolph's an extremely talented actor. And then with Exit Protocol, it's him and Scott Martin when they're just in the living room. And it's these two guys going back and forth, and it feels emotional. And that's not something you kind of get in a lot of these action films.
No.
That you have these kind of one-on-one moments where it's like, oh, these guys are extremely talented actors that get to show more than just pulling a gun and, firing at somebody. So I was happy to, when I came on, I said, I just can't go from shootout to shootout to shootout.
Which is one of the great things with that living room scene, which I have to tell you, that had so much heart in it.
Yes. Yeah, and that was important to me. And, it's easy for, producers or financiers or whoever to cut that out. But, that's why you want, it makes these other scenes, I think it raises the level, because it's like, now you don't want these people to die or get injured.
Right.
Because you care about them, know more about them. I want to know these characters first and foremost. Who are they? And we learned a lot about who they are. But just two people sitting in a room and them going back and forth, and it's emotional, that scene.
Mm-hmm. Very, very much so.
Some people.
Well, and this is where your work with Mark comes into play. because of the intimacy that is created. Because that cabin, it is not big. The rooms are not big. The ceilings are not high. We see that when Dolph tries to walk around. There is not 4 feet of ceiling room above his head. But there's an intimacy and almost blankets everybody in security that, of course, we know is going to be a false sense of security because of what will inevitably happen outside. And while we've had major shootouts already, we have this quiet, wonderful scene inside. Then we see these beautiful images in the forest of horses and deer. And then suddenly you got guys dressed in Black Ops outfits that come sneaking up. And the way that you visually have designed this, that you and Mark have blocked this out, works so well to not only keep us on our toes, but to immerse us in the intimacy that these men share by their given profession. And that really impressed me, how you did that, Shane. And throughout the film, I mean, you keep us in the moment. You know, Mark's, the lighting and the lensing, as I said, it's light, it's bright. We see what's happening. And it's much like the assassins. They know people are gunning for them. You know, you're an assassin, you're gunning for someone. Someone's gunning for you. So there's no reason to cloak and dagger it. So, and I just,
100%.
That was so refreshing to see that. So I'm curious about the decisions you and Mark made in that regard.
Yeah, we didn't want to, you know, there's enough darkness, there's enough nighttime shooting and everything that we wanted to make it fun and lively and not depressing. Like, you see some of these scenes and, you know, it's these film noirs, it's like, I can see what you're trying to go for, but it's depressing. Let's make it fun. Let's make it bright. Let's, you know, we shot outside a lot. I mean, the racetrack and the woods and the airport and yeah, let's open this world up, you know, because we're closed off enough when we are in the house and we are these places, but let's see the scope of what we could do. But, you know, there were limitations to that because we were dealing with wildfires at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So when we shot one of the opening scenes at this mansion that's in New Mexico, we wanted to shoot these wide shots of, you know, let's get a scope of this mansion, but that was, you know, why have this mansion if we're just focused on the upstairs when his first kill in the film. Mm-hmm. But there's a wildfire behind the building. I mean, behind that house. I mean, in the distance. And then when we were at the airport, we were told that we had, you know, I think we had 2 days there. It ended up being, you know, less than a day because we got evacuated from there. So
jeez.
You know, so we rushed through those scenes as fast as possible. You know, it's a low budget. You know, we couldn't wait for a wildfire and get pushed. You know, it was safety first, but also, okay, let's get through this. And, you know, some of these things were like one-take wonders.
Yeah.
So it's like everybody had to be at the top of their game. You know, let's make sure this thing's in focus. You know, and the actors just nailed it. So it wasn't one of those things, you know, it wasn't Kubrick where we needed 40 takes. We were fortunate to get it in 1 or 2 based on the circumstances. And then right after that, the cabin we shot in, it washed away in from the wildfires, and then the flooding that happened right after that.
Oh my God!
So the racetrack, you know, they closed down. They had to close down for a while. But you know, those cabins in the woods, or the cabin in the wood we shot, I mean, it literally washed away.
Wow!
So we got out of there in the nick of time, and you know, we were fortunate.
Yeah, no reshoots.
Yes.
Exactly. No reshoots on this one. This is even more kudos to Mark with his lensing, with the camera placement and all, because when you got wildfires, your air is changing and you run the risk of having all that smoke filling the air and changing the temperature of the light. So
100%. Thank you for noticing that.
I'm really impressed. Now, I know it's well within his wheelhouse and he's capable of doing this, But to actually never know that there are wildfires happening is really, so he did a great job with the LUTs and any color correction afterwards. Now I'm even more impressed because we can't tell there were wildfires.
No, that was, there were some places we wanted a lot more scope, but we, I'm really happy with what we were able to get in, certain circumstances, not the whole film, but certain circumstances there. So, and Mark's something like, Mark, every chance he's my go-to DP.
Mm-hmm.
So, every chance I can, we're just on a stage in Hawaii for another film, and I've been to New Mexico several times with him, and Kentucky with him, and kind of all over the place. So, yeah, it's he makes my life so much easier. There's not a whole lot of explanation there with him. We kind of understand. We talk about it beforehand, but on the day, he knows what we're going for and what we want, and it's not. I've been in other circumstances with other DPs where it's, I want this, and they think it should be this, and then there's an argument. But I've never. Mark and I are always on the same page, and he's super talented. I'm glad we connected, and we'll continue to do. Done 10 films. Let's do another 10.
Hey, absolutely. But now, once you get all this footage, it's in the can, and you're turning it over to Jake, your editor, who you've worked with before on Best Man, Christmas Classic. What was the editing process like on this one? Because you obviously did not have 5 and 6 takes to choose from on things, just because of the sheer logistics. So in some cases, you've only got one shot, maybe 2.
Yeah, exactly. For me, anyway, I don't do a lot of takes anyway. I mean, I'd like to do 4 or 5 and not 1. But I always shoot 2 cameras, and I shoot a ton of coverage on these fast. So if there's something happening, I can cut away to another actor listening, or, tapping their gun on their knee, or, or their leg, or whatever it may be. We always have those options to do it. And it always works well in these action films to, the more coverage, the better. So, but no, with Jake, and I sit down with Jake, he'll do his first pass, and then he and I are in it. And I'm sitting there in his office, and we're working away. And, I'm active, I'm always actively involved with the editor there, just because I have that vision and I want to be as close to that as possible. And then, that's why, but I let them do every editor. I'm like, okay, you do your pass, because maybe I can be surprised. So maybe I didn't see it like this or whatnot. But then again, I know the footage so well that I could say, well, why didn't you use take 3 on this one scene? Which happened, it happens every film, but it definitely happened on this one. And, there were a couple of times like, well, I don't have that angle. I was like, what are you talking about? And then we call back. It's like, oh, that didn't get transferred.
Oh, God.
It's good that for one, it happens all the time. So it's not, for one reason or another, those things happen. So that's why I like to work with the editors throughout the process on every film I've ever done.
Sure.
And
was it challenging on this one? Because yes, you got the action, and you want to space it, as you said earlier. You don't just want to have action. You need to have those quieter moments. We need to see the humanity in these guys come out, which we do. But that comes down to your pacing. And also because there is some humor here. But it's not the balls to the wall, laugh out loud, fall out of your chair humor. It's subtle, and a lot of it comes just because of the demeanor between Scott and Dolph. So finding that balance, was that a challenge for you and Jake to nail that aspect?
Yeah, especially like, they have the standoff, Scott and Dolph, behind the truck with Charlotte in the scene, and then all of a sudden the assault comes, and like, hey, can we table this for a second? And normally just like, I'm going to shoot you, and I'm going to try to figure this out myself. If you're really going to come, so those lighter moments there, and Michael and Scott and Stephanie, who played Wicked, super talented. So, when they're in the car, the past relationship between Stephanie and Scott, or their characters, it's funny, and Stephanie brought a lot, and Michael too. Michael's good at comedy.
And Michael's very good at comedy.
He and I talked about that before the shoot about, what I like to do on all sets are for every scene, I will take Mark, my DP, my first AD, and then just the actors. Mm-hmm. Those are the only people allowed in the scene. So if Scott Martin's in the scene, then he's in it. But as a producer, he's not. Right. So I would work with those people because, walk through it. I want to see it. I'm not going to tell you to sit there, stand there. I want to see what you're going to do. Mark and I will adjust for that because I want them to feel natural within those moments. But also, let me hear the comedy. We'll do a couple takes like that, and then if you have some different lines you want to throw out, then by all means do it. Mm-hmm. I'm very collaborative in that way. So that way, when it's time to go, we know. So, because I think my first film, it was pre-lit, and I made these actors in these spots that didn't feel natural. So from that point on, it's no, show me what you're going to do, and then we will match to that. And Mark's been amazing at that.
Well,
then, once the comedy comes out too, going into Jake and editing, it's okay. Ooh, let's let that breathe a bit, because that's funny. Sometimes it was fast. It's you lose. Having directed a couple of comedies, you can't have it on joke on top of joke because you're still laughing at the last one. So, and you miss the next one. But it was subtle, and Scott, Scott controlled those scenes, and his subtle comedy really came out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's so fun to watch him, and he's got an earpiece in, or he's on his cell phone, and he's talking to Augustus, and he's so matter of fact. He's leaning up against the car. No, I'm not worried. I'm not worried. But you better be worried. And it's the nonchalance that really is so delightful to see here. Mm-hmm. Now, the whole thing that brings everything together then at the end is your score, is Jagmer's score. And what is really interesting here, the films of his that I'm very familiar with, the score, it is very action, it's fast. But here, you give him, and some of his instrumentation is harsher than what is here. So I'm curious what you were looking for musically, because this really shows some more emotion in the score itself, while still maintaining the energy and the heartbeat, the percussive notes that help fuel the action. So I'm curious about what you were looking for with Jagmer.
Yeah, with him. So I'd worked with him multiple times, but as the sound mixer. Mm-hmm. So I honestly had no idea, because every time I've come to him in the past, we already had our composer on board. And when I heard he was composer, I had no idea in the beginning. I mean, when we were shooting it and whatnot, and I was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that you did. I'd seen a couple of those films that he'd done, but didn't realize it was actually his score. So he blew me away with what it was. And then, a lot of that was really Scott Martin and him talking, because when they got time to really jump into post on this, I was shooting another film. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately I was, they were sending me things. I was actually shooting film with Mark. So we were in Hawaii on a stage. So that was right in the middle of it. So, a lot of that was, here's my ideas for it. And then Scott and them and Yalmer just kind of ran with it. And I was, Yalmer's so talented, his ear, and I was ecstatic when I was hearing I heard some of these roughs and things he was working on. So I look forward to really diving in with him on future projects. Now that I see, how talented he really is as a composer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed by hearing a differential in his composition from what I know him for. So, and he really can embrace those quieter moments without losing any of the sonic energy in the soundscape.
100%. And knowing that he was mixing it too, it really helped him, because a lot of times as a sound mixer, you're fighting with what someone's already done as a composer, but knowing that, he's wearing two hats, and it's like he knew exactly how this was going to blend in together. And it was pretty seamless.
Yeah, see, you lucked out there. You lucked out with that. Yeah. So not everybody always has that luxury, but you really scored. Yeah. So now that everybody is going to get a chance to see Exit Protocol, and because of the unusual circumstances of you stepping into this film, into this project, and picking up the mantle as director, what did you learn about yourself as a filmmaker that you can now take forward into your future films?
That's a fantastic question. I've been doing this a long time. I've directed 10 films. So every film you learn something new. And with this one, it was to really roll with the punches, with the wildfires and stepping into circumstances. I'm a big prep guy. I love, I have to have a month of prep normally on site. So this was the first time out of all my films that I've just been thrown to the wolves, and it shows really that trust other people. This is how Daniel, the original director, was going to do it, and okay, yeah, that might not be what I'm going to do, but these are the locations that we have, and we are going to make this work. So, it meant weekends and nights. Okay, let's look ahead, just based on the circumstances of what we're shooting the next day and going in there and figuring this out. And fortunately, Mark, knowing Mark so well, that we were able to jump ahead on a Saturday and go look at some of these locations on our off day and see what we could do. So, I hope I never have to deal with that circumstance again of stepping in, but I do know that, heaven forbid a director gets fired or whatever, and I step in again, I know I can do it, and, trust the people. I mean, there's that whole crew, super talented. I can't go forward without mentioning Daniel Cummings, the producer, UPM on this thing, and he was the one who called me initially to see, I'm available, could he bring me on? And he's the one who found the locations.
Good job. He did a good job.
He did. We did Best Man, Christmas Classic there, and then that one all in Ruidoso, New Mexico. So, it's just trusting those people. It's trusting, we can pull this off. We can get through this. And yeah, that was that's what I learned the most. But no, great question.
But Shane, you did an excellent job with this film. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I want to see it again, just for the heck of seeing it again, because I did have so much fun. And seeing Charlotte in this role after just seeing what she did with Neil Marshall in Compulsion is
that's quite a different role.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. Beyond. But I love her in Compulsion.
Yes.
And Neil's very picky about who he works with. So I love that. But seeing this other side of her, what you brought out of her in Exit Protocol, wow. A nice calling card for Charlotte.
It is. It's something different, completely different. She's got such a really good range of what she can pull off as an actress. So seeing her do this damsel in distress that steps up, and it was fun. I looked forward. I don't want to give anything away, but I mean there's the potential for other films in this series.
Absolutely.
Scott and Chad and Dolph and Michael and on down the line, Charlotte, Stephanie, everybody. We can pull this. This will be a fun one.
Well,
fun series.
Chad,
I'm excited to direct the first one.
Chad is your friend. Tell him to get to work. Write some more. Because I like this mix, I like this story, and as you said, there's a lot more stories that can be told and turn this into a franchise of some sort.
Yes,
So
I agree. And you know, it's what's so fun about these characters too is, you know, we build up as like Scott's character, and they travel the world. So this next one, you know, could be on a beach somewhere. It could be, you know, in Europe. It could be, you know, there's just so many places because, you know, these worldwide hitmen. You know, let's put it in snow. Let's go on the beach. Let's go other areas. Yeah, it's kind of limitless with what we could pull off with the series.
well, I for one hope to see that in the future, and I can't wait to see more films from you, Shane.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll. You know, I'm in post on another one right now with Mark. So Halloween Store with Simon Rex, Anthony Michael Hall, and yeah, and that'll be out next Halloween. And then Chad and I wrote another one that I'm going to direct here in January or February. So yeah, it's some fun. You know,
I
fun
can't.
times ahead.
Well, then we're going to have to chat about the next ones upcoming, Shane.
I can't wait. And Debbie, thank you so much.
Shane, thank
you.
you.
Know, I'm a fan first. So when I heard about this, when I was excited because you really get it. I mean, these are, you know, you get a, you know, there's fluff questions, and you really dig. You know, that has never been you, nor will it ever be you. You ask the questions that filmmakers like myself listen to. You know, that's why we want to listen and hear more, because I want to know how they pulled off certain things or what they did, or, you know, under crazy circumstances.
Yeah, I want to know.
Filmmaker in this range, yeah, no filmmaker in this range ever gets. You know, we're not shooting, you know, 100 days. We're shooting, you know, 15 or 12 or, you know, whatever it is, and, you know, we're able to pull them off and continue making more films. So I love that you dive down into that. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for making films and make me want to dive into them. So
yes. My pleasure.
Oh, until next time, Shane, this has been an absolute joy and a pleasure. I can't wait till we chat again, so get back to work.
I will. Chad and I will do it. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. And that was Shane Dax Taylor talking about Exit Protocol, which you can see right now in theaters, streaming, or on demand. It's on 3 platforms for you right now. So, that is all the time we have today. 2 terrific films for you to check out: Exit Protocol, which is available now, and Trap House, which is out in theaters on Friday. But join me again next week when you'll hear from Lotfi Nathan talking about his new film, The Carpenter's Son. I was mesmerized, riveted by this film, starring Nick Cage, who does get to be the Nickest Cage of Nick Cage for a couple scenes. While also you'll hear Stephen Schimek talk about Murder at the Embassy, one of the Miranda Green mystery movies. So until then, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.